Hello, hello, hello. Wow, that didn't come out very well. Scott Sambucci here. It is time for our next episode of the Go Farther series, number six in our series. So, wherever you are right now listening to the show, I want to let you know I appreciate it. Maybe you're on a dog walk or at Trader Joe's, doing laundry, on a commute, wherever it is that you pick up your podcasts. That's where I listen to my stuff with other podcasts. And I just appreciate that you're listening and dialing in and catching these episodes each and every week. So today's episode number six, we're going to talk about confidence. Confidence as a way to help you do more, be happy, and surprise yourself because we all want to go farther. Again, real quick, before we dive into this episode, I've got some good stuff here, I think, and that I think you're going to like. I do, again, as part of my appreciation, also want to ask a favor. If you would, share this episode with someone, send them a text. You can click the share episode link in your podcast player, share with a friend or 10 that you feel like might have some benefit from this particular episode. Also, if you're not already following the show, please do that. Definitely helps us and helps boost the rankings of this podcast because the podcast different player platforms look at the number of subscribers. They look at likes, they look at reviews. I would love it if you could leave a review just real quick, like, hey, I've been listening to this podcast series. It's been great. It's helping me with 1, 2, and 3. All of those things accumulate to help us get out in front of more people like you. And the more people we get out in front of people like you, the bigger the impact that I can make and that our team can make here at Sales Qualia. So let's dig in. Let's talk about confidence. So why is confidence important? Well, I think as a company founder or business owner, or as an individual, as a person, if you will, outside the professional world, I think, a lot of times we kind of can feel frustrated if you feel like that you could help somebody, or you could probably do a little bit more. Maybe you want to help other people, or that you might be able to impact another business more positively if we're talking about things on the business side of things. And I think a lot of times underneath all of that the frustration we might feel, that really it's kind of seated in a sense of doubt, which is like, hey, am I good enough? Or why would other people want to listen to me? Or what makes me think that I would be able to accomplish this thing that I set out to do? And so confidence is really important because I think the thing that we really want is we want to be able to trust ourselves. We want to be able to know that I'm doing the right work, and that right work is going to lead to the types of results that I'm expecting to. And confidence also allows us to take action on something where we might otherwise feel hesitation or feel tentative or feel worried or scared. And I think that confidence also kind of gives us an opportunity to feel good about ourselves. Like, I know when I've done something well, or I'm doing something well, or I'm about to do something. And that sense of confidence, it's this really a feeling that I get in my chest where I'm like, no, I kind of put my chest out a little bit and I feel good, and I can walk boldly and strongly into any new situation. And I've got a couple of scenarios that I'll share with you. And at the end of the day, I think it's important for all of us to be able to have that confidence so that we can take those actions that we want to do, the things we want to do to help us do that one crazy thing, or do the little things every single day. And on the business side of things, a lot of times, especially if you're a startup founder, that confidence is what we need in order to really lead the crusade. I used to work with a coach, his name's Byron Davis. Byron was on the US national swim team for a couple of years. And I was linked up with him by a good friend of mine. And when I was looking for some business coaching it's probably going about 10 years ago, maybe a little more than 10 years ago. And so one of the things that Byron taught me is that when you're going out and you're starting your company, you're almost like starting a movement. And the phrase that he uses is to lead the crusade for the cause. You've got to lead the crusade for the cause. And that I think is a lot what we want to do on the business side. But then we also want to lead our own personal crusade. And maybe that cause for us internally is to be healthier, or to try new things, or set a good example for the people that around us that we love and we want to be able to influence. So let me share a couple of examples of confidence from personal life, races that I've done, as well as other things that come up for me every day on the personal side of things. Then I'll share a couple of things of why confidence is important and how you can feel the sense of confidence on the business side of things. And then I've got a couple of strategies as per usual, that all of these things are, again, I want to remind you, these are things that have just worked for me that I've learned and developed over the years, both through my own personal experience as well as learning from other folks. So The idea here is to share what's been working for me so that you can adopt those concepts and see what might work for you, and then adapt them to your business or to your life, right? So this word confidence, I remember if you happen to be on the blog page for this episode, there's an image, or the LinkedIn page for this episode, there's an image of me before the Western States 100 in 2021. So the Western States 100 is a 100-mile race, 100-mile ultramarathon, starts at Palisades in Northern California in Sierra Tahoes. Palisades is what was formerly known as Squaw Valley. And so you run from Squaw Valley or from Palisades, and you go up and down a bunch of mountains, up and down some valleys, and you end up in Auburn, California. So the whole trail is a 100-mile race. Before most of these big races, one of the things they'll do on the day before the race is they'll have all these pre-race activities. So one, you want to check in to get your bib, and you also want to hand off your aid bags so that when you're getting to different aid stations, you've got different gear that you might want to switch into, or more food, or a change of clothes, or whatever it is that you might want. They also do a pre-race meeting where they kind of go through the course, and they might preview like, hey, this has been a really wet year out there. So even though it's June, you're going to run into some water at certain places, water crossings up in the high Sierras, and just kind of give you a sense for what to expect, as well as go through any rules that are important for them to share with you. So one of the other things they'll do for you as part of this pre-race festival is they have lots of different vendors and sponsors that will come by, and they have, given away different stuff, which is cool. But then they'll also take your picture. So they ask you to bring your bib with you. So you have your number and you hold it in front of your chest, and then they just take like a pre-race picture. And it's kind of a cool feeling because in a way it's like, okay, now we're gearing up for less than 24 hours away from the gun going off and the horn sounding where we're going to hit this race trail. And it's just kind of a fun moment to know, like, man, this is all happening. And even now, as I talk about this, I'm kind of feeling the sensation of the excitement and the anticipation that goes into starting a race. And I remember when I took this picture, I was walking around Palisades in the village area. And that day I had this wonderful t-shirt. This t-shirt is something that my son gave to me for Father's Day when I think he was about 4 years old. And it is a Superman t-shirt. It's just a t-shirt with a Superman logo in the front. You've probably seen these with other superheroes as well. And it's always been one of my most cherished t-shirts because one, my son gave it to me, and two, it's something that I will wear around the house. I'll wear it outside sometimes. I'm going shopping, food shopping, stuff like that. And I chose to wear it when I was walking around the village before the race because I wanted to let myself feel confident. And so when I was getting this picture taken, I've got me and my bib and my Superman t-shirt, and I've got this giant grin on my face where I just remember this picture being taken. And I remember walking around the village feeling confident. And it wasn't confidence without any reason. It was confidence because I had spent 6 months training for this race, like going all the way back to the first week of January, going out in the rain when it was cold, going out in the heat when it was hot, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday just so I can run 35 miles, or even did a 50-mile training run for this race. I was logging every calorie that I took in using an app called Chronometer. So every single piece of food that I put into my mouth, I was tracking caloric intake and my macronutrients and my micronutrients. I was making sure I was getting the right amount of sleep. I was rolling out my muscles. I was doing stretching. I was doing weight training. I basically trained like as close to what I believe a professional runner could train for this race. I mean, putting in 15, 20 hours a week, easily many weeks just to train for this race. And over the course of those 6 months, doing the training, working with a coach, I hired a coach named Jeff Browning, who is a legend in ultra running. He's won multiple 100-mile, 200-mile races. He set course records. The guy's amazing. And so I paid to work with him throughout the course of this training because I wanted to have as wonderful of a race and as fast as a race as possible. My ultimate goal for this race was, yes, I wanted to finish, but my ultimate goal was to finish the 100-mile race in under 24 hours. So this race has a 30-mile cutoff. So you have up to 30 hours to complete the race officially. And when you complete the race, you get a buckle. A belt buckle is this is what they do in ultra marathons, is give you a belt buckle. But if you finish in under 24 hours, so if you come in at 23:59:59 or better, then they'll give you a silver, they award you a silver buckle. So it's just to say that you've covered 100 miles in less than a full day. And this number, 23:59:59, this is a number that I actually wrote on a piece of paper and put it on my mirror in my bathroom. So every morning when I woke up and went in to shave and brush my teeth and do all the stuff that I do, this 23:59:59 was just staring at me. I did a whole episode about this a few years ago. So everything I was doing was designed to hit this number. To, yes, I wanted to finish the race. Yes, finishing under 30 hours would be a huge accomplishment. But I really, really, really wanted to finish this race in under 24 hours. And that's everything that I trained for. And so going into that race and that final day, when I was up there at the village and walking around and feeling prepared, feeling confident, because I knew whether or not I was able to finish in under 24 hours was less important than knowing I had done everything possible to make this happen within the physical limitations that I have. There wasn't any more training I could do. There wasn't any more that I could have prepared for the race in terms of planning. I had even gone so far as to look at past years. I looked at climate. I looked at weather patterns. I looked at times for each race. There's actually a paper that was written, a statistical analysis of the Western States 100, and it looked at finishing times over a period of a couple decades. What I basically did by looking at this paper, I had figured out that for me, given the race course and number of racers, it was likely I was going to have to finish in the top 20% of the runners, 20 to 25%. So typically, there's about 20 to 25% of the runners that start the race are the ones that finish in under 24 hours. Now, some years it's more, some years it's as many as 30 or 35% if it's a really good year for weather and conditions. In other years, it's less than that, but it's pretty rare that it's less than 20%. So I thought to myself, well, I need to be faster than 4 out of 5 people that start this race. And I was walking around the village. You can't tell how fast people are by looking at them. But as I was walking around, I was feeling to myself, like, look, I know my training. I know my training times. I know that I've covered literally 98% of this course as part of my training. I ran 98 of the 100 miles on this course, multiple times. So I knew like every mile, every climb, every step along the way. And as I was looking around, I was like, I feel confident that I can be one of those 20%. I just feel like I can do it. And so I think it's just really important because it all went back to my training and my preparation and knowing I'd given it everything that I had. So it's just an example of a way where I felt confident and there was a really good reason to feel confidence. Another example is over the last couple of years, I've started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I started this in August of 21, a couple of months after this Western States 100 race. And by March that next year, I decided to compete in my first tournament with a white belt level. That's your first belt. And first tournament, I got crushed. I got smashed. Lost both my matches, which happens. And it was a good learning opportunity. Then in July, I competed in a second tournament and I won my first match, then lost my second match. So I was like, okay, I'm getting better. And then in late August, early September, 2022, I signed up for Jiu-Jitsu Con, which is the World Championships in Las Vegas. So there's a giant Jiu-Jitsu conference in Las Vegas every year. And so they have a separate tournament for white belts only, which is the one I was competing in. And then they have the main tournament for blue, purple, brown, and black belts. And so the only one I could obviously compete in is the white belt one. But throughout the course of those months, since March, going through end of August, when I had this tournament, I'd really, really focused in on my training. I'd been making sure I went to at least 3 classes a week, sometimes 4 or 5 classes. I was taking notes. I was working on different aspects of my game, everything from starting from standing all the way through to different holds and different positions. I just felt as prepared, just like with my race, as I could. And I remember sitting in the bullpen area after you get there, you check in, you look at the time of your first match. And these are one and done. So in this case, if you lose in this world championship, if you lose your first match, you're out. So you might go all the way to Las Vegas and train for 6 months, and you could be submitted in the first 30 seconds. And that's it. Your tournament's over, period. But I remember sitting in that bullpen area before my first match and feeling calm. And the reason I felt calm and the reason I felt confident is because, again, I knew I'd put in the work. I was prepared as I could have been. Like, yes, maybe I could have trained more, but I've got work, I've got family, I got my wife, I got my son, I got, everything that else is going on around me. So there's only so much you can do to prepare, right? But I felt prepared and I felt calm and I felt confident. And most of all, I felt like I've already won in a sense. Like I signed up for this tournament. I got myself here. I prepared. My jujitsu is better than it was 6 months ago. And a year ago, I just started training jujitsu. And here I am in a situation, putting myself in a situation where I'm competing at this world championship. So that sense of confidence, again, came through preparation. It came through the work that went in to going into that tournament. The last quick example is something I use in coaching all the time when I'm coaching in soccer. So I coach my son's club soccer team. And, there's a couple different kids, every kid kind of has their kryptonite. And so one of these kids is one of our best players in the team. And he's just big and strong and skilled, and he's left footed. And he oftentimes doesn't want to use his right foot. And so every single time that I see him use his right foot, I always applaud him. I always say, hey, great job. And it's like designed to give him a little bit of confidence. And now this season, he scored a couple goals using his right foot. And I always joke with him, I'm like, wow, your right foot actually works. And it's just a way to help build his confidence that every practice, every game that he's using his right foot, he gets that little pat in the back. I've got another kid who plays in a center midfield position. And what I've done for him is on the field above the goal box where there's a little arc that protects from the penalty shot area. I basically designate this area. I'm like, this is your spot. And the analogy I use is in basketball. So Steph Curry, who's obviously one of the best basketball players ever, when he has his spots on the court, like he just knows if he's going to release that shot, he feels confident that that shot's going to go in. And so I kind of designated this, I'm like, anywhere you're in this area, and I even put cones down in like this box. I'm like, this is your zone. This is your box. You get the ball here. I want you to turn and shoot. And what's interesting is now he's starting to do that. And I keep telling you, take the shot, take the shot, take the shot. Well, a couple of weeks ago, we were at a tournament and we were in the finals of this tournament, and we were up 1-0 and going into the second half. And about 10 minutes, 15 minutes into the second half, because he was in the right spot, ball bounced out and he turned and he cracked this shot. It was a rocket into the net, put us up 2-0. And at that point, we all felt like, hey, we're going to win this game. Because I felt like the reason he was willing to take that shot is because I'd been building him up and giving him this confidence in practice. And even in practice, he missed a shot. I'm like, hey, I don't care if you miss. What I care about is taking the shot. Like, this is your spot. Take the shot. If you miss 9 out of 10, it doesn't matter, because what will matter is the one that you made. So I try to instill that confidence in them just through repetition. And that's something I think we can all do for ourselves. So let's talk about a couple examples on the work front, places where you should feel confident, that you deserve to feel confident, of course, if you've done the right thing. So one of those examples could be in that sort of big meeting in my coaching program. I call it the big meeting. The big meeting is when maybe you've done some preliminary phone calls with a prospect, you've talked to folks on the team, and now you've got like the big Zoom meeting where you have multiple people that want to see the product demo. I remember when I was at Blend Labs, we used to fly on site to some of these large banks and sit down with EVPs, executive vice presidents, and C-level folks, and kind of have this whole day of meetings to talk about different aspects of our software and how it was going to affect the lending team, the operations team, the product team, the compliance team, the risk team. And going into those big meetings, right, there's like days or weeks of preparation that go into that. However, it's easy, I think, to go as like, okay, we walk into that meeting and we sit in that room and there's a bunch of bank executives that have been doing banking for 20, 30 years. And here we are, a bunch of software dudes out in Silicon Valley. Like, it would be easy and I think natural for all of us to feel like, what am I doing here? Like, why me? Like, am I really going to put forth all of the ideas, the education that I know these executives need to hear and need to learn? And it can be easy for us to almost like cower away from all the things that we want to say and that we need to say. And we frankly know that they deserve to hear from us. And so a lot of times in that sales situation, whether it's that big meeting or in general talking with a prospect, a lot of times what I see with company founders is they oftentimes ask almost either for permission or they're always asking, like, what do you think we should do next? And a little sales lesson I tell people is that something I learned from David Sandler, which is if you don't have a process for selling, you're at the mercy of your buyer's process for buying. If you don't have a process for selling, you're at the mercy of your buyer's process for buying. And what that means in the startup world, like we're selling a new technology, we're selling a new product, we're selling something that never existed before. You're selling a product that replaces SharePoint or manual process or some old crappy 1990s software, right? Most of your customers actually don't know how to buy your stuff because they've never bought it before. They don't know what Gen AI is. They've never bought stuff that works in the cloud. They've never found a solution that automates a bunch of manual processes. So if we ask them, like, what do you think we should do next? Their answer is going to be like, they actually don't know. They don't know what the next steps are. And so the analogy that I like to draw is like, imagine hiking in the woods and you you've opted into this group hike. There's 5 of you on this group hike, and you've got a guide, hired somebody that's local, knows the trails, knows the terrain, somebody that's going to help make sure that you get through the trail, you see all the cool stuff. There's a waterfall over here, and there's like a really nice peak over there with a view of the valley. So you've got this guide, and you're instilling your trust in that guide because you assume that that guide knows what they're doing. So imagine now you're going on that hike, and it's middle of the summer, and the forecast looks good, and it's supposed to be sunny and warm, and you've got your water, and you've got your food, and you headed off the trail, but you're up in the mountains. You're at 7,000 feet, and all of a sudden the weather pattern changes, and now the sun thunderstorms start rolling in. Maybe part of the trail, a couple big trees come down because of the wind or cracks of thunder and lightning that come down, and all of a sudden you realize, like, we actually got a little turned around. We're not sure what to do from here. We're not sure to handle this weather. We're not sure. We got a little lost because we got turned around when we lost our orientation because of the weather. Right? Could easily happen. Well, what if your guide turned around to you and the 5 other people and it's like, all right, guys, like, what do you think we should do next? What would you say? Like, how would you feel? You'd probably be like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of why we hired you. Or they're like, oh, it looks like we might have to stay here for the night. Like, what kind of shelter do you think we should build? How do you think we should build the shelter? Be thinking like, no, man, like that's kind of the reason that we hired you. Or they said, like, look, we kind of have some food in the packs. We have some energy bars and some water. You guys think we should try to forage for some berries and some more food? Be like, how quickly would your confidence erode in this person? And so I share that as an example when you're thinking about your sales process or going into that big meeting. Like, your customers want to be led. Your customers need to be led. So if you've done the preparation, if you've done the research, if you've done the discovery calls, if you've mapped out exactly how you feel like you could help this bank or help this customer get to the outcomes that they want to get to, then you deserve to be confident, and they deserve to feel confidence coming from you. They need to be led. It goes back to what Byron Davis said, I shared earlier. You have to lead the crusade for the cause. You've got to be confident, right? So another example might be on the marketing side, right? One of the things we encourage our clients to do is to run, we call it an authority voice strategy, So authority voice basically says, look, you are a voice of authority around the specific problem that you solve for your companies. And the reason you're an authority is because this is all you do every day. You wake up at 2 a.m. thinking about this problem. You wake up in the morning after you've slept for the night. You're like, I got to work on this problem for our customers. You're working on it all day. You're talking to people in the industry. You're talking to your engineers. You're going to conferences. Like, a lot about this specific problem, about this specific part of a bank's lending function, for example, right? And so authority voice basically says we should transfer that information and knowledge into a opportunity for us to teach the marketplace about how to be thinking about these problems. And most importantly, from a sales standpoint, what that's going to do is help you find what we call hand raisers. It's going to find people that say, hey, I want to learn more about this. And it sounds like you might be able to help me learn. Where founders and where clients sometimes get kind of locked up is we say, look, let's do this. Let's run a webinar. We'll do a quarterly webinar series. So we'll put a date on the calendar, say, look, you're going to run your webinar on Thursday, March 21st. And for the 4 weeks before then, We're going to help you build the content. We're going to help you with your outreach. We're going to show you how to get people registered. We're going to show you what to do between the time they register and the time that the webinar runs. We're going to show you what to do after the webinar runs for the people that show up and the people that don't show up. We've got this whole system we're going to help you deploy. And the founders get excited and they start working on this with us. And it's a couple weeks go by. And now it's like a week before or a couple days before the webinar. You're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if the content's good enough, or we have 15 people that signed up. I was hoping it was going to be 30 or 50. And they start to look for reasons to not do the webinar, to cancel it, to delay it. And that's where I turn around to them and say, look, you need to feel confident that number one, whatever content you share, it's going to be good and it's going to be valuable because by default, you already know more about this problem than the people that raised their hand to join. Number two, it doesn't necessarily matter that 15 people signed up or versus 30 or 50. What matters is that 15 people signed up, number one. And number two, you now have built out a system. I've taught you how to set up a webinar. I've taught you how to create content. I've taught you how to do outreach. I've taught you how to do registrations. I've taught you what to do after registrations. You can now lift and reuse this system. So in order to complete that system, you have to run the webinar. You have to figure out what you did well. You have to figure out where to improve for the next one. And then you need to have the ability to follow up with all of those leads that came in. But most importantly, it's like knowing that you know what you know and that you've done the work with our help. You should feel confident that when you hit go, when you hit the record button on that webinar, or when you hit play and you let all the people into the room for that Zoom, that it's going to be good. It's going to be good enough, and you're either going to win or you're going to learn something. So it's important to feel confident in that respect. So there's just a couple examples. So when it comes down to strategies, like how do you feel more confident? How do you be more confident? Not just feel it, but be more confident because you deserve to be confident. There's just it's kind of like a couple of simple things that I think are really important. I've talked about these already in this episode. So number one is plan, prepare, research, like do the planning. You can't just like walk into the big meeting, fly to Chicago, walk into the big meeting and wing it and feel confident. There are people who do that and they feel falsely confident. They're like, oh, I just know what I'm doing. I'll just go in there and wing it. It'll be fine. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is being confident because you deserve to feel confident because you've done the planning, because you've done the calls with the team, everyone that's going to be in that room. You've done individual conversations with them. So you know exactly where the lending officer is going to see value in this meeting and where the risk and compliance people are going to have questions. And you know what the operations people care about on the back end. And you know what the IT folks need to have from a data standpoint. You've done the research and then you've done the planning. You've put together a presentation that maps to all of those needs. You've planned it out. You know what questions you're going to ask. You've anticipated what questions you're going to get asked to you. You've done the planning, you've done the preparation. Now it's just time to execute. So if you've done that well and you've put in the time to plan and prepare and research, then you should deserve to feel confidence. Yes, you want to be humble in some degree. You want to be not overconfident. You feel like I know everything that there is, but you should feel confident enough to have that little extra strong voice, to have that presence in the room, because those people in that room, they've asked you to come to that office. They're trusting that you have brought them information that they need. They're trusting that you're going to educate them and you're going to help them see how it's possible for them to solve the business problem they have or achieve the strategic priority that they want to achieve. There's a reason that you are there. And if you've done the work, you've done the planning, you've done the preparation, then you deserve to feel confidence. The second piece related to this, the second strategy here is to just trust your plan. So once you've done the preparation, once you've done the planning, once you've done all the work that goes into preparing for those meetings, then just trust the plan. So in ultra running and in any kind of running or endurance events, one of the common mantras is trust your training. Trust your training. So usually about 2 weeks before a big race, you should go through what's called a taper. So you're ramping up your training, ramping up your training. You might have some rest weeks in there, but usually about 2 weeks before the big race, it's important for you to let your body recover and rest. You might have some nicks and like slight muscle pulls, and you want to make sure that you're feeling good, you're feeling strong. You want to get some extra rest that you might have that you might need because you've been training so hard. And it can make somebody really antsy. I get really antsy during taper because I'm so used to putting in lots of time. I go from 15, 20 hour a week training down to say 10 and then down to 5. And in a couple of days, I might just go for a couple short 3 mile runs just to kind of get the legs working and work out the jitters. But it's easy to feel like, did I do enough? Am I really ready for this race? If you know you've done 6 weeks of training or 6 months of training going into this race, then this last 2 weeks is actually part of that training. So when it comes time to hit the starting line and that gun goes off or the horn goes off, then you just need to trust your training that you've put in the time, the effort, and the work, and just work that plan. Trust that plan that you put in for the race. Okay. The third thing you do is just track your progress. This will help you build confidence. If you're doing something big, whether it's an ultra marathon or launching a product or starting a startup or getting from 1 million to 3 to 10 million in the next 3 years in revenue, those are big numbers. Those are big jumps. Those things could take you 18 to 24 months to go from 1 to 3 million. It could take you another 18 to 24 months to go from 3 to 10. And so it's easy to start to feel the day to day collide against you and kind of set you back. And so as a way to help you build confidence, you need to track your progress. Look for milestones. Look for little signals that you know you're making progress. Document your process and document your progress. One of the things my wife suggested that I do when I was working at Blend Labs, because I would get frustrated. I'm like, God, this is so hard every day. It's so chaotic. It feels like we're not making any progress. She said, you've got this commute on the train. Why don't you just take like 15 minutes and log all the stuff you did that day, to help you build confidence, to know that you're actually making progress. I still have those Evernote files from 10 plus years ago. And there's times where I'll go back and look at those. And I can remember certain days and certain conversations that I logged as a bullet point. I'm like, oh man, I remember that conversation with the engineering team. I remember that demo that we did for that big prospect. I remember feeling like, wow, we're really nailing it today, or wow, this was a really tough day. But it gives me confidence in the future to know, like, as I'm consulting more startups and doing the next new adventure, that hey, I've done this before and I've made progress in the past. So these will allow you to feel confident to know, like, hey, yeah, we're between 1 to 3 million in revenue. We're at kind of stuck on 1.8 million. But look at the things that we're doing today. Look at the 15 people that came to this webinar. Look at the leads we got from this conference. Look at the fact we have 3 contracts in or 3 deals in late stage. We feel pretty confident that one of those is going to convert in the next 3 months. Those are all little pieces that you need to track and document it and track your progress so that there's a reason for you to keep going forward. And then the last thing I encourage people to do is just to talk to the people around you. On the business side, talk to your customers. Ask them, like, hey, what value are you getting from us? Why did you choose to work with us? What kind of positive outcomes are you starting to get? And if it's the people around you on a personal scale, like, ask them, like, look, you've noticed I've been training for the last 3 months for this half marathon. I'm just curious, have you noticed anything different about me? My wife and I will talk about that sometimes, where like this calendar year, I made some decisions and which I've talked about, which is getting, kind of back on this fitness path. And we were just talking the other day and I just said, I'm just curious if you noticed much that's different. And she's like, you just seem happier. She's like, I can tell you feel happier because you're training every day. Your energy level's good. I can tell you're really enjoying your work right now. And while I guess I do feel those things, I do feel happier and I am enjoying the work that we're doing this year. And I do love to go out and get this exercise in every day and fitting it in, even if it's only a 20-minute workout. There are some days where I'm like, okay, is this really worth it? And just asking somebody that I love and trust to say, like, what have you noticed? It kind of gives you that confidence. And like, oh, this thing is working. I put together this plan. I'm now working the plan and other people are noticing. And it's a reason to feel confident. So those are just a couple strategies when it comes to creating the confidence that you deserve to have. So go out there. If you've done the work, what you're doing, you're listening to podcasts like this alone, the fact that you're listening to this podcast should tell you that you're putting in the extra work, the extra effort. You could be listening to a different kind of podcast. You could be not listening to anything at all. You could just be going through the motions, but you're not. And I suspect if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably also reading other ways to improve your business. You're the kind of person that's doing the planning, you're doing the preparation, you're doing the research, you're giving it all that you've got, right? And so feel confident because you deserve to feel confident if you're that kind of person. And most importantly, the people around you also deserve to feel that confidence. So, lesson for today. So I hope that helps you to do more, be happy, and surprise yourself. Go farther.